Have you ever noticed that the moment you fight a feeling, it grows sharper and heavier as if it feeds on your resistance? And have you ever wondered whether acceptance is not giving up, but finally stopping the inner struggle that keeps you stuck? Welcome back to the channel today. We are going to explore acceptance and letting go in a way that feels human, practical, and deeply common, not as a slogan you repeat when you are tired, but as a living skill that changes your nervous system, your thoughts, your relationships, and the direction of your life. Two ideas will guide everything you hear. First, acceptance is not approval, it is the end of inner arguing with what is already here. Second, letting go is not something you force with the mind. It is what happens naturally when awareness meets experience with patience, compassion, and clear seeing. Let me tell you this as a story, because acceptance is not a concept you understand once. It is a doorway you walk through again and again in ordinary moments when you feel stressed, disappointed, triggered, lonely, judged, or uncertain. There was a person who wanted peace more than anything, not just a quiet weekend, not just a few good hours, but a stable inner peace, the kind that stays. Even when life gets messy, they had tried positive thinking, they tried staying busy, they tried avoiding difficult people, they tried controlling outcomes, they tried being strong, they tried being numb, they tried pretending nothing affected them. Sometimes these strategies work for a moment, but the peace never lasted because the strategies were built on one hidden belief: I should not be feeling what I am feeling. That belief sounds harmless at first, it even sounds responsible, but it creates an inner war because feelings arise, whether you approve of them or not, and when you fight what arises, you create a second wave of suffering on top of the first. The person lived with this second wave for years. They would feel sadness and then judge themselves for being sad. They would feel fear and then criticize themselves for being weak. They would feel anger and then shame themselves for being angry. They would feel anxiety and then panic about having anxiety. They would feel loneliness and then tell themselves they should be more grateful. So the problem was not only the emotion. The problem was the relationship to the emotion, the constant pushing away, the constant bargaining. The reality be different inside the body. One evening, the person had a moment that was not dramatic, but was honest. They were sitting alone after a long day. The mind was spinning as usual, worries about the future, regrets about the past, judgments about themselves, and underneath all of that there was a simple tiredness. They did not want another technique to fix themselves. They did not want another project. They did not want to perform healing. They simply wanted to breathe without feeling chased. So they did something they rarely did. They stopped running for a moment. They sat down and let themselves be exactly as they were. At first it felt uncomfortable because when you stop running, you finally notice what you had been carrying. The body felt tight. The chest felt heavy. The stomach felt restless. The throat felt tight. The jaw was clenched. The mind kept generating thought after thought like a machine that fears silence. And the person almost got up to distract themselves again, but something inside whispered a different possibility. What if I do not have to solve this right now? What if I can just be here with it? This is where acceptance begins, not as a big decision, but as a small willingness, the willingness to stay present with what is already here without trying to force it to vanish. The person took one slow breath, not a perfect breath, just a real one. They felt the air moving and they felt the air moving out, and they noticed that even though the mind was loud, the breath was still happening, the body was still alive, the moment was still here. They then tried a gentle inner move. They let attention drop from the head into the body instead of thinking about feelings. They felt the feelings as sensation. They noticed pressure in the chest. They noticed a buzzing in the belly. They noticed a tight band around the throat. They noticed heaviness behind the eyes. They noticed a restless energy in the legs. They did not call these sensations good or bad. They simply noticed them like someone noticing weather. And this is what surprised them. The sensations were not one solid block. They were changing. They pulsed, they shifted, they moved, they became stronger, then weaker, then stronger again. The mind had been telling them, but the body was revealing the truth that everything is moving. This is the first deep gift of acceptance. It brings you back to reality, and reality is always more fluid than the story in your head. Now the mind tried to interrupt with its usual strategy. It said, you need to understand why you feel this, you need to blame someone, you need to fix something, you need to plan, you need to judge. But the person practiced a different response. They did not fight the mind, they simply did not feed it. They let thoughts appear like passing clouds, and They kept attention resting in the body and breath. In those minutes, something softened, not because the person forced it to soften, but because the nervous system began to receive a message that it rarely received. It is safe to feel. It is safe to be here. You do not have to run. This is why acceptance is healing. It is not passive, it is brave, it is a form of inner kindness that tells the body, you are not alone with the feeling. Over the next days, the person started practicing acceptance in small moments because they realized this was not only something for quiet evenings, it was something for real life. The next time they felt irritated in traffic, they noticed the tightness in the jaw. They noticed the urge to complain. They noticed the story forming, this always happens, my day is ruined, people are so selfish. Then they practiced acceptance, not of traffic as a perfect situation, but of the present moment as it was. They felt the hands on the steering. Well, they noticed the breath, they sensed the body. They allowed the irritation to be there without obeying it. Something changed. The traffic did not disappear, but suffering decreased. The irritation became just energy instead of a full inner war. Then, in a more emotional moment, they felt a wave of sadness. It came out of nowhere, as sadness often does. In memory, I song a quiet moment, a message that did not arrive, a photo, a smell. The old habit would have been to resist, meaning distract, numb, analyze, blame, compare, shame. But the person practiced acceptance. They sat and felt the sadness in the body. They noticed heaviness in the chest, into softness in the eyes. They allowed tears to come without turning them into a dramatic story of hopelessness. They breathed and stayed. And they discovered something very important. Sadness becomes heavier when it is resisted. Sadness becomes cleaner when it is allowed. Clean sadness is grief that moves like rain. It hurts, but it opens the heart. It does not poison. Clean sadness teaches humility. It teaches tenderness. It teaches you that you are alive. Resisted sadness becomes bitterness. It becomes numbness. It becomes depression. It becomes a closed heart. So acceptance did not remove pain. It changed pain into something workable. Now this is where letting go enters the story, because acceptance and letting go are like two sides of the same breath. Acceptance is the willingness to let the present moment be as it is inside you. Letting go is the release of the extra grip that says it must be different. Many people think letting go means pushing feelings away, but that is not letting go. That is suppression. Real letting go is the end of clinging and resisting. It is the end of holding the feeling with a tight fist. The person began to see that every time they suffered deeply, there was a hidden fist somewhere in the mind or body. They were gripping an expectation. They were gripping an image. They were gripping a demand. They were gripping a fear of being judged. They were gripping a need for certainty. So they practiced finding the fist in the body, the jaw, the shoulders, the belly, the hands. When they found it, they gently softened it. This was not dramatic, it was subtle, but subtle changes create big ripples because the nervous system learns through subtlety. When the jaw softened, the mind softened. When the shoulders softened, the breath deepened. When the belly softened, fear loosened. This became a daily practice of letting go through the body, because the body is where resistance lies. The person also discovered that letting go is easier when you stop arguing with impermanence. Everything changes. This is not a punishment. It is reality. The mind wants permanent safety. The mind wants permanent control. The mind wants permanent reassurance, but reality moves. When you accept impermanence, you stop treating change like a betrayal. You stop reading endings like personal failure. You stop reading uncertainty like an enemy. You begin to live with more flexibility. And flexibility is peace. Now the person still had real responsibilities: work, family, bills, health decisions, but acceptance did not make them careless, it made them clearer. Because the mind wastes a lot of energy fighting what cannot be changed right now. That wasted energy could have been used for wise action. So the person learned a simple inner rhythm: accept first, then act wisely. If there was a real problem to solve, they solved it. But they did not solve it from panic, they solved it from presence. If there was no action needed in this moment, they rested in awareness and stopped manufacturing extra problems. This is a mature form of letting go. It is not giving up, it is giving up inner struggle. Now the person encountered the hardest test of all: relationships, because relationships touch the deepest attachments, the deepest fears, the deepest old wounds. One day someone close said something that triggered them. The words touched an old place, the place where they felt unseen, the place where they felt disrespected, the place where they feared abandonment. Instantly the body reacted, heat in the chest, tightness in the throat. The mind produced its familiar script. Here we go again. They never change. I must defend myself. I must attack or withdraw. I must be right, or I will be hurt. In the past, the person would have reacted quickly. They would have thrown sharp words or shut down or tried to control the other person with guilt or silence. But because they had been practicing acceptance, they noticed the reaction. As it arose, they felt the heat as sensation. They noticed the story. As story, they recognized the urge as an urge. And then they made a choice. They accepted the inner wave without acting it out immediately. They took one breath and stayed connected to the body. They listened longer than their ego wanted to. They spoke slower than their fear wanted to. They expressed their boundary without cruelty. Later they realized something. Their relationship did not become perfect, but they did not create extra damage through reactivity in this matter, because reactivity creates long consequences. This is cause and effect in everyday life. When you react unconsciously, you plant seeds of regret, conflict, and distance. When you respond with awareness, you plant seeds of trust, clarity, and healing. So acceptance and letting go were not only about personal peace, they were about ethics. They were about not multiplying suffering. Now the person also learned something about the mind that loops. Many people cannot accept feelings because the mind keeps narrating them. The mind keeps describing them. The mind keeps predicting that they will never end. The mind keeps building identity around them. I am anxious. I am broken. I am doomed. I always fail. Nobody loves me. This will never change. These thoughts are heavy not because thoughts exist, but because they are believed. So the person practiced a gentle separation. They stopped saying I am and started saying there is. There is anxiety. There is sadness. There is anger. There is fear. There is a tightness in the chest. There is a story in the mind. This change sounds small, but it changes the inner posture. Instead of being inside the emotion, you are aware of the emotion. Instead of being inside the story, you are aware of the story. And awareness is the space where letting go becomes possible. Now here is the core discovery the person made and became their main Buddhist thought, even if they did not use that language. The feeling is not the enemy. The resistance is the enemy. When they stopped resisting feelings, the feelings became waves that passed. When they resisted feelings, the feelings became prisons. This does not mean you enjoy pain. It means you stop turning pain into suffering. The person began to see how often they were firing a second arrow at themselves. The first arrow is the raw discomfort. The second arrow is the mental violence. This should not be happening. I cannot handle this. Something is wrong with me. I should be different. Life is unfair. This proves I am not enough. Acceptance removes the second arrow. Letting go removes the grip that holds the arrow in place. Now, as weeks became months, the person noticed their nervous system changing. They were not always calm, but they recovered faster. They were not always happy, but they were less trapped. They still had fear, but they did not obey fear as quickly. They still had sadness, but they did not add shame on top of it. This is real healing. It is not perfection. It is freedom from being owned. They also noticed that compassion grew naturally, because when you practice acceptance toward your own inner storms, you become less judgmental toward other people's storms. You realize everyone is carrying something unseen. Everyone is reacting from patterns. Everyone is struggling with impermanence. This compassion did not make them weak, it made them wise. They could set boundaries with kindness. They could speak truth without hatred. They could forgive without excusing harm. They could walk away when necessary without turning it into a war. Now let us talk about one of the most subtle places where acceptance matters: the feeling of emptiness. Many people run from emptiness. They fill it with noise. They fill it with scrolling. They fill it with food. They fill it with constant talking. They fill it with chasing approval. They fill it with drama. But emptiness is not always a problem. Sometimes emptiness is space. Sometimes it is the mind not knowing what to do without constant stimulation. The person practiced sitting with emptiness like sitting with open sky. They noticed that behind the discomfort there was actually a quiet openness. They began to sense that the open space itself was peaceful. This is where awakening becomes real, because awakening is often the recognition that you are not only the person with feelings and stories, you are also the awareness that can hold all of it. When the person rested in that awareness even briefly, they felt something that did not depend on conditions. They felt a quiet okayness, not a forced positivity, just a grounded presence. This became the deeper meaning of letting go is not losing yourself. It is losing the false identity that says you are only your thoughts and feelings. Now I want to bring this into a simple guided story you can imagine in your own day. Imagine you wake up and anxiety is already there. The chest is tight, the mind is scanning for problems, the urge is to check the phone and get lost. Acceptance would be to feel the tightness and admit, this is here right now. Letting go would be to stop fighting it and stop feeding it with catastrophic story. You would take one breath and feel the body. You would remember that anxiety is a wave and you are the awareness that can hold the wave. Then you would take one wise step. If something needs to be handled, you handle it. If nothing needs to be handled in this second, you return to presence. Imagine you have a difficult conversation and anger rises. Acceptance would be to recognize the heat and tightness without calling yourself bad. Letting go would be to release the need to win in this second. You could speak firmly but not cruelly. You could pause, you could choose words that reduce suffering. Imagine you are alone and loneliness appears. Acceptance would be to admit the ache without judging it. Letting go would be to stop telling the story that you are unlovable. You would feel the ache as sensation. You would breathe, you would let the feeling move, and you might realize that loneliness is also a doorway into deeper presence when you stop resisting. These are not imaginary skills, they are practical moments of freedom. Now we are nearing the end of this talk and I want to reflect on something that creates real resonance. Many people think acceptance is something you do after you become spiritual, after you become healed, but in truth acceptance is what heals. Acceptance is the environment in which the nervous system can relax enough for change to happen. Without acceptance you are always at war, and war keeps patterns alive. With acceptance you begin to stop feeding the patterns, and when patterns are not fed they weaken. I have seen this in people around me in very ordinary ways. Someone who lived in constant anxiety began practicing accepting the bodily sensations without panic, and their attacks became less frequent. Someone who carried resentment for years began allowing the hurt to be felt without replaying the story in their heart self, and someone who judged themselves harshly began meeting mistakes with kindness, and they became more disciplined, not less, because they were no longer exhausted by self-hate. These are not dramatic miracles, they are steady ones. So if you are listening and you feel stuck, here is the simplest thing I can offer today. The next time a feeling arises, pause for one breath and say internally, this is here. Then stop fighting it for one breath. Then feel the body for one breath. Then notice the story and do not continue it for one breath. That is enough to begin. Because one breath of awareness is how the chain breaks. One breath becomes many, and many becomes a different life. Thank you for being here with me today. Now I want to invite you to share your experience in the comments. What is the hardest feeling for you to accept, and what does your mind usually do when it appears? And if you want more long-form teachings, let this support the channel by subscribing, liking and commenting. Your support helps this kind of practical wisdom reach people who are tired of inner war and ready to practice a gentler path. Until next time, keep returning, keeps opening, and remember, acceptance is not the end of your life. It is the beginning of your freedom.